Okay, judges, Gracelyn. Okay, Valencia.
Here.
T12. Okay, so welcome everyone to the fourth preliminary round of IVED 2023. My name is Raken, I'm from UGM. I will be your chair for this round. Judging along with me will be Gracelyn and also Valencia. So without further ado, let's call upon the Prime Minister to start the debate. Here.
All right. Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
All right. Give me a second. Okay. I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. Realizing how management trainee programs could actually harm people that don't have as much privilege as these people, or people that are simply opted out of positions of managers and whatnot, people who, because of the existence of these programs, can no longer climb the corporate ladder properly. We see this unfit to actually exist, right? Before going to my arguments, I want to set up a few things, right? First, what do we think the status quo of current corporate ladder actually looks like? We think it's quite simple on how everyone realizes how hard it is to climb the corporate ladder. We think that it takes a lot of luck, it takes a lot of opportunities that come to you naturally and whatnot. But we're also talking about on how these management training programs will easily make this climb towards corporate ladder much easier, but only for very specific people, right? All right, let's talk about on how these management training programs actually work. We think that it looks like corporations implementing a curriculum on how people, especially fresh graduates, exclusively fresh graduates, are rolled through all the corporation's existing divisions, talking about on how they will be supervised and noted for their performance on each of those divisions. We think that there will also be a passing grade, whether that be through tests or supervisor's notes, eventually placing them a spot in whatever division the corporation see them fit, meaning that they don't really have a choice on what division they land. But the benefits of this manifests in form of like great salary, great starting position, which also means that you will escalate your career much more easier simply if you are able to opt and access this management training program, right? But all of this again requires you to be a fresh graduate. It isn't available for anyone, right? Realizing all of this, I want to bring about several arguments. First, I want to talk about on why this would promote a worse working place, talking about on how it promotes unfair corporate ladders, on how some people are simply opted out of this proposal, right? Realize that the existence of management trainee programs means that the managerial positions of these companies are then reserved for the people that would eventually pass this program, right? Simply because you aren't going to have a management trainee program if you don't have a position that's open, meaning that these managerial positions would be exclusively available for these people and not people that already exist in the companies and whatnot, right? Which means several things. First, we think it disables a lot of people's ability to actually climb the corporate ladder and make a better life for themselves, meaning that they're now that they're now perpetually stuck on their career. We think that this is a major harm that needs to be tackled on how this form of reservation could still promote a healthy and motivational working environment for people that cannot opt into management training program, a question that opposition needs to answer, right? I'm talking about people who didn't come from the top 3 universities in Indonesia, right? I'm talking about people who are too old to join while having worked in the corporation for longer. I'm also talking about people who didn't have the connection to link them up to this program, to refer them and whatnot, just like to have like the education on knowledge on that the fact that these management training programs actually exist in the first place, right? Exactly then, do we think that this harms these people and promotes an unhealthy work environment? Talking about on how these people are then locked out of a higher paying position that they could have achieved from their hard work, from their dedication towards the company and whatnot, due to outside circumstances that are out of their control, realizing that they could work as hard and as much as possible, but that still wouldn't be enough at the end of the day, right? Which also easily leads to, if you want to talk about demotivation, right? Talking about how people will eventually are more likely to just do the bare minimum in your workplace because a 9 to 5 40-year-old office worker realizes that there are 20-year-olds who has a higher starting pay compared to them, or even a higher pay in general, due to a program that emphasizes privilege. We think that this serves no purpose, right? Second, let's talk about points of emphasizing points of privilege even further. We think that in a world of tough competition, in a world where people would do anything for a position and realize how fucked up our like capitalistic society is, that forces us to do this, forces us to comply and think that all of this is normal, emphasizing that even more and placing points of luck, points of privilege, ideas of birth lottery, even more will always be a negative. While opposition might come in and say that this is just how the world works, you gotta do what you gotta do to survive, we say no. We prefer to actually like just not put any more emphasis on how you have to like comply to this idea of like well, if you just don't do better, like you aren't going to get anywhere. We think that this is messed up at the end of the day, right? I want to talk about my second argument, talking about why at the end of the day this would still lead to the exploitation of the management trainees at the end of the day, right? Realistically speaking, the notion of quote-unquote exploring various departments in management trainees is merely for promotional purpose. So you'd be interested in the management trainee programs to begin with, right? Let's take a look at actually what actually happens during these management training programs, right? First, it looks like a long recruitment process. It looks like long working hours because at the end of the day, they try to bait you with the idea of like you have a higher starting pay and whatnot, and they can just abuse you because it's for your career and the future anyway, right? It also looks like even if you graduate, your position is determined by the corporate itself, meaning that you have no choice at the end of the day. These characteristics of management training programs is very harmful for several reasons. First, we think that the amount of time taken to actually do these programs is actually hamper you to actually do the job from yourself, right? You're only like focused on like satisfying your supervisor, doing well on the test and whatnot. Even though in comparison, you could actually have like a real life working experience on how to manage people compared to like this fresh graduate idea on like how like a 3 years experience would still be better compared to like someone who have been working for longer with more experience, right? Second, we think that the word of like exploring departments in real life means that you as a trainee, you're obliged to immediately comply with the workloads of the company. We're talking about big companies that have numerous projects, talking about how they have hectic schedules, stacked workloads and whatnot. We think that this is bad for people who are new, trying to apply for just for certain positions, because even though you increase your skill and whatnot, which is not exclusive to management training program anyway, because there exists course tutorial programs and whatnot, you are not accustomed to such kinds of jobs in the first place. The difference with pre-existing traditional recruitment is and like climbing corporate ladder is that as a management training participant, you are forced to adapt within a shorter period of time in comparison to workers or employees who inherently uh, built from the start up, try to get from zero to get to a position, right? It's much more natural that way, right? Moreover, notice how management training program on how the mentality of future employees, right? We think that management training programs is designed to make it on how graduates eventually feel good, on how they will have like this superiority complex, so on how they have this survivor bias, talking about on how, oh, I joined this company for special training, now I'm much better than everyone else who hasn't done it. This is harmful considering that there are so many people who have the exact same quality or even better and much more experience that are now being replaced by new recruits simply for the existence of management training programs. Again, talking about on how some people simply do not have access to this, simply don't have the privilege and whatnot. We think that the mentality that is being shaped by management training programs in itself is going to be bad, particularly, especially when you're considering on how these people who you inflate their egos with, who you inflate their superiority complex and whatnot, we think that giving them a managerial position would bring about so many harms. And for that, I am proud to propose.
Hi, PM. Hello. Is it
Oh,
just me or oh sorry, you were inaudible for a while. Hello, PM.
hi. Wait, was I
Yeah,
disconnected?
you were you disconnected because you were inaudible for like several seconds?
Oh,
The last word I heard was about inflating the egos of the fresh graduates.
I think I had like a couple of seconds left after that. But I think it's 8 minutes anyway, so
Oh,
yeah, I think it's fine for
um,
everyone else.
so were you done speaking or gimana?
Yeah, I was done speaking.
Okay. Noted on that. Okay, thank you so much for that speech. Um, now I call upon the leader of OP.
Okay, check.
Okay, yes, you're audible.
Set timer bentar.
Yeah.
My speech will start in 3, 2, 1. In a corporate structure that is usually very stiff and stagnant, it is always better to see who is best suited within the own company in itself to find the best people for the job, right? One clarification: government said that we only favor fresh graduates. We say no, stop making your own assumptions. Because even within the contact slide itself, there is no mention of fresh graduate in itself. And we're going to set that in our own characterization, we open this for everyone. This means that anyone who is an employee and has the capabilities to do that can register to this program. One rebuttal and the rest is integrated. Government said that there's going to be bias under our side, but we think that it's going to be no different than what happens under their side of the house within the status quo, right? They never explained to us what the comparative is under their side, because under our side no bias exists exactly because there's a standardized test. There's going to be numerous amounts of scenarios tests, such as emotional tests, management tests, scenarios to see what will these people do if, for example, the company is put into a decline and etc. So we think that there are plenty of metrics to judge them in a fair way to prevent bias. We think that this program is justified and different from any other type of program and studies such as what government have mentioned to you, because you actually put in your time and effort with no guarantee at all, while at the same time you're also doing your job, your full-time job within the company. So you take on this double job, you take on the risk within yourself to get the reward that is already promised. So we think that that is fair. Now, what would this management trainee program look like from our side? We think that this is designed to seek future leaders that is ready and capable to lead the company, right? We're going to give mentorships, we're going to give programs. So we're not just throwing people and giving them a task. That's not how it looks like. Note that this program is open to all the potential employees, and most likely they are already working there for a couple of months up to a couple of years. Even the seniors can do this, right? This can be a great way for the seniors to compete. I'll explain that further later on. After they graduate from this specific program, not from their university, they are going to get that position. So this is basically like a test later on to see to see who is most capable instead of just picking a person based on why that person is favored. Once they take that position, we think that there are check and balances later on, such as like reviews, seeing if they're good at their job, and etc. Now, the current problem in status quo is that most of the time people get promoted because they are the oldest, because of seniority, they have stayed in that company the longest. While in reality, not everyone is actually built to lead, right? Even though you've worked there for 10 years, most people is much better in being led because that's how they can do their job, right? We don't think that qualities such as responsibility, accountability, management skills exist in a lot of people all at the same time. This is harmful because if we simply promote people because they have been in the company for the longest or they have put the most time there, we think that it is harmful and problematic for the company. You can have incompetent leaders who are corrupt most likely, such as how Blockbuster went bankrupt exactly because of the poor managerial skills by the managers. Second of all, corporates and company have a toxic behavior of monopolizing the corporate structure. means that there are office politics where you have to side with your boss. You have to appeal to your boss, for example. So don't buy government's characterization when they say that climbing corporate ladder is very natural. How is it natural when, for example, if you looks, it's easier for you to get a job. It's easier for you to get a raise, for example. It's easier for you to get that job once your boss resign because your boss has always liked you all this time, right? That's what happens in this kind of school. There is no fair metric to pick the best person for the job. Now, first argument, we can provide leaders with a higher quality and basically higher quality and higher output later on. Firstly, they are self-motivated, which literally means that self-motivation within these trainees, they have an internal drive to be the leader. They have the motivation to do that, and they know that they are the right person for the job. Even if they're not the right person for this job, we're going to equip them with the necessary skills or the basic skills, for example, on the theories of how they can manage and etc. And then we can use a series of tests to see if they're emotionally capable for the job. This would also increase the competition. Why then competition is good? Because having more people competing for a job means that people is going to work twice as hard. People is going to put much more effort. People is, for example, going to study better in order for them to understand what it really means to be a manager instead of just getting that position for free just because you look better than some other people, for example. This also means that you have more option to just instead of picking one person for the job. Even if in the worst case scenario we only find like 2 or 3 people, that is still okay because this program will eventually give them training and they have to compete for that certain position. So with all of this curriculum and etc., we think that it is still fair for them to compete. Second, we think that we open better opportunities to people with better managerial skills. Comparative to what government have said, how they're able to, for example, counter bias and etc., but they never prove to you what the comparative is under their side of the house. We think that usually managerial positions are only open to seniors who have spent many time. Hence, newer employees are often overshadowed. People who have only worked for example, 6 months, 1 year, or 2 years, they are overshadowed, right? No, they are not given the equal opportunity, even when they might have a much better quality of being a leader, for example. Now, we think that we're not saying that seniority is overly bad, but the fact that when you are a senior, you have additional privileges and benefits, such as being chosen into a very high position job with no metric of judgment to begin with. Because if that is the case, then anyone who's loyal to their bosses or anyone who looks good can literally get that benefit also, right? The moment when we open opportunities, we also allow seniors to compete because if seniors think that they really deserve that job just because they have worked there for 10 years, they know this job more than anyone, then feel free to apply, right? Because then they can also compete with, for example, people who have only worked there for 3 months or 1 year. This is even better because if more competition exists, then people, even seniors, are also going to do their due diligence. They're also going to work and study the theories behind of being a good manager and etc. Why better opportunities is exactly because, for example, what government told you, corporate is top because people can refer to higher rated universities, for example. It means that under their side of the house, the most likely bosses is going to be people coming from the top 5 university in Indonesia. Because traditionally, managers would appoint someone that already has a high reputation or a good background that looks, just basically from their university name, for example. That is how you refer one person to another. But we think that under their side of the house, birth lottery still exists because only the privileged can get that position. Under our side, we actually open that. Even though you are less privileged in that side, you're still going to get the same kind of training program. You're still going to compete with uh, under the same standardized test that they are going to go through later on, which most likely is going to be a very quantitative and qualitative test. So there is no bias because it is standardized test. So with that alone, we already stop meritocracy. So how in the end we can provide better working environment? Because the moment when you handpick the best people, this means you already test them. You already know which one is going to be best for the job. Hence, things such as abuse or corruption and etc. is less likely going to happen because there's already a high filtration system. That's all from me. Thank you.
Alright, thank you for the speech. Kalaupun untuk the Deputy Prime Minister, thank you.
Oh, can I be heard?
Yes.
Give me a second.
Okay.
Sorry about my timer. I'm gonna start my speech in 3, 2, 1. For so long, even without the MT, corporate have already have the incentive to not specifically to say that they want to exploit everyone, but like there's just tendency where unfortunate a lot of workload is being imposed to specific workers. Like let alone this MT will just like allow these things to become even more aggravating under the rest of the house. And we just basically regret all of these things. I'm just gonna explain further in my extensions, right? But before the several rebuttals for opposition side. Number one, when they come to you and say that, this mechanism is actually not going to be specifically for undergraduate because like we're also going to like hire a lot of like all of those workers. There are two responses to it. I don't think this is true. In some instances, for example, even now you can see to the point that how Excel company, for example, through their program only open batch for undergraduate, which basically hinder the opportunity for like workers to join and opt in, right? I think this also applies to a lot of unicorn out there that basically has a goal that is being impacted only for undergraduate, because there's a lot of narrative circulating right now that Gen Z that coming out of this undergraduate are actually so productive to the point that it's good for them to really use the resources of this undergraduate, right? But number two, even if this is not true and they're still right, I just think that even if you want to say that all workers still have the likelihood to opt in, I question their likelihood, right? With the all of the characterization, if you hear their LO characterization about how resourceful this undergraduate is, you also it also means at the other flip side, it also means that these undergraduates are more promising to the company. So companies will most likely question whether the function of the old worker as opposed to the undergraduate who can give you a lot of things, right? So in the end, that the competition will also going to hinder the likelihood for these old workers to be opting into the trend and basically, backlashing the old idea. But number two, right, when they come to you and say that they will just basically give the equal opportunity to senior too, right? Number one, we think that this position is not about like knowing about the work and about I think this is not about like knowing the exact science behind the work, but more about managing the people that existing, which means that seniority and the experience that comes with it as a natural choice for the positions. We think that senior also did not have the equal start off, right? They just start off as juniors as well. So we don't see why it would be unfair for this senior to go to process which basically refresh them to go back to junior, right? After all those years and months of them spending time in the company. I think this is just not productive under their side of the house, right? But also next, when they come to you and say that they will be just like opening more opportunity for graduates who are less privileged, right? Number two, I think that there are two things. Number one, we think that this system under our set is also going to work, right? Whether you're MD or not, whether you want to join the traditional recruitment methods, right? But under our side, we how would you make it fair then when you already opt into the job, right? Which makes me going to second response. If opposition also want to champion fairness, we say it is better under our set because now you are allowed to start from zero as a new employee and grow all together with the rest of fellow employee without having to be hindered by a decision of empty graduates manager. The promotion don't have to hamper. All the things we integrated in my speech. To extension, number one, why despite the impact of getting compromises like manager, the middle process is so bad. In the beginning, it gives you promises, and the way MT portray themselves in a promotion always comes in a good way, like promising you to have a good mentor, fair amount of workload, contracted support, etc. These are the attractive factor that traps young undergraduates or even like workers out there to feel like they can opt into this
trend and contribute. But notice, where does this debate work? This debate works in those well-established companies like unicorn, startup, or conventional companies that have a very strong market demand, in which competition and workload will be a lot. This extends to several things. Either one, you will be the perfect mechanism for a corporation to exploit the resource of young MT even more, or two, your effort of getting the managerial problem is not impactful. What is the likelihood of this, right? We think that there's a huge arbitrarial gap that existing when it comes to company and MT. In the very first place, company will think young MT are nothing but a young people, a young undergraduate with a very good resource to tokenize, and they have so little bargaining power if they want to speak up and talk about the workload. Yes, you might say there is contract whatsoever, but notice that workload is very unpredictable, and this undergraduate might not be that well versed to be a shocking increasing number of it. But even if this is not true, on the flip side, we think that young MT will be less likely to ponder and compromise this workload even more, because they will think, if only I try to speak up about my workload, it will be counted as something that is disrespectful and will affect my performance. Because in the end, this is a competition where everyone needs to show up in a perfect condition to get that manager position. We think that the further, exactly because this is being perceived as a competition to be the manager, everyone is not going to be focused on well-versing themselves and exploring the department, but they're just going to focus on getting the prize. I'm going to impact this further. What is the comparative that we provide in the absence of this? We need that under our side, a lot of mechanisms to justify yourself when workload is a lot, to compromise with the higher position, even to opt out, exactly because you have no price to get whatsoever. Under their side, we think that more young undergraduate MT will be more likely to trap in this nasty corporate cycle where you justify sacrificing your mental health, physical well-being, just because you have to gain the prize. They'll be most likely feel like it's going to be a waste for me to back up now and sacrifice after all those things I've already done due to that promise of being manager, like what these companies give. But two, in terms of crisis and recession, times like this are inevitable on both sides, and it's going to be so dangerous for companies to exploit their resource even more. Not in these hard times, market shock is something that is far-fetched from what undergraduate experience. And not that since their mechanism is, you're trying to well-first them in this department and etc. I'm questioning their mechanism. How are you going to prepare this young MT? Well, just like this very superficial of 1 month per department. If this market shock comes, right, I think that it's going to be hampering their workload even more. But thirdly, why the end their mechanism is just like backfiring, right? I want to dissect their mechanism. They're just going to put this young MT in multiple departments and let them learn how the system works. I'm unsure with how long the time will be, but let's just assume that this is fast, right? Because how rushed everything needs to be done. For example, we have 12 departments to finish in only 12 months. This is only shows you the superficial layer of every department and not the depth level of it. Because notice that hardship in certain departments do not show up in that short amount of time, but it will show up as the times you go and you will learn about that department even more, right? And on those hardships, you will just think like, oh, I think I'm fitting in accounting department without even noticing that, for example, it's only 1 month that provides you the good performance and the good superficial layer of how good accounting will be or how easy everything will be. But they just do not show you about like the depth of it, right? I'm questioning how, even if they say that, oh, they're just mentor that tell you everything, experiencing this directly and getting the experience that being told to you from your mentor is two different things. Not only talking about like how they're just gonna sugarcoat you everything to opt into this department. So the process itself is already questionable in the very first. But fourthly, right, why this will just produce people with superiority complex that will just backlash to your company. Notice that their mechanism is so utopic and like providing everything and so fast, right? Even in the end, you promise this managerial position. I think that people, especially young people right now, will think that, oh, I have the capability to become a manager in only short amount of time, right? I think that this is going to be very, very bad if talking about manager, because what you need about manager is not only you need to have a good skill, but you need to have a very good empathetic skill that you're able to compromise to your worker, for example, in an emotional way, for example, not only in a good skill way, but to communicate them, which basically takes a lot of years of exercising and practicing that cannot be achieved in a short amount of time. If only you give them this instant amount of position, it will just drive them to become much more confident. We say that confidence is good, but when it's being overexploited even more, it's just going to make them to wanting to have this superiority complex to basically even impact this further. So what we have basically proven to you. So in the end, even if this is basically beneficial for this young worker, for example, or young MT to get a managerial position, the middle process is basically quite harmful to the extent that it will just basically create a product that you do not want to have in your company. And for all these reasons, very proud to propose.
All right, thank you for that speech. Now I call upon the Deputy Leader of UP. Time is yours.
Hello? Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
I'm audible. Okay. Okay. Now done. All right. Give me a second. What is this? My timer. All right. Okay. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Wait, no, never mind. Timer nya nggak start. Bentar ya. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. First of all, framing. 1. Panelists, one thing to make things clear, this debate should not focus on the technicality because companies and examples can be different, right? So if we follow the context slides, it is fair to say that this program, MT program, later on is open to all workers, even seniors, and also undergraduates who's about to be joining the company, right? At the very least, the contract measurement is whoever are self-motivated enough and wants to join and wants to improve their work are able to join this MT programs. Second, the only thing that the affirmatives proves is that toxic corporations exist. Corporations only hire from top universities. Corporations only later on promote some person or one person. So if there's 10 seniors, they're always going to only promote one anyway. So I really don't find the idea very great or very should be credited much, because all of they're doing is saying that toxic corporation is real. But this harm is symmetrical, right? But later in my speech, I'm going to explain why it's actually going to be worse underside government, underside affirmative. Now, thirdly, our burden of proof is to prove to you why anti-program inherently create better leaders later on, and of course, seek out harm that comes from affirmative winning this debate. There's going to be 2 arguments. First, why is this justified giving extra benefits, giving extra salaries towards these peoples who join the management training program? To understand how it is justified, we have to ask ourselves, why should you as a worker, for example, join such a program that is extensive, meaning long in process, which specifically only targets self-motivated trainee, meaning there is lots of competitions, right? It explores diverse department, meaning that there's many workload in multiple departments in a certain company, right? All of this is going to be much more stressful for you as a worker, adding to your normal job that you have or your college that you have. So you're going to be much more stressful, right? Because you're going to take this course whether you're working, whether you're still in school, and etc. So several reasons why the justifications later on exist. First of all, time. For far too long, we have been told time is money, time is important, time is the greatest currency that exists. What does this actually mean? In its simplest form, your job, the more time it takes, should be the more reward that you're able to take or you have the right to take. Now imagine this. You already put your time, you're in a worker at this company, you're a college person, but you're always looking for a way to climb the corporate ladder. That's why if you're self-motivated enough, you're willing to sacrifice your time, your leisure time, the time where you can relax to improve your knowledge by joining the MT program, right? Exactly, one time. Your leisure time is you're literally sacrificing your time for the trade-off that you get improvement in your work. Second, effectivity. With this training program comes effectivity. No matter how much time you put into your work, you have to make sure that what you're doing is effective enough to finish the job in faster time frame, or at least before the deadline actually happens. Let's do a comparison between both teams of the house here. If government wins, the people that is given the positions of managers later on are based on 2 things. 1, seniority, and 2, nepotism in the company. And it's not going to be based on your skills whatsoever. So imagine this. Your boss that you know is incompetent are given the position of manager, most likely ruining that whole department because they were incompetent in the first place. Under our side, we want more of our managers to have the proper training to benefit themselves and, of course, benefit the company even more. And they get that through the MT program. Reason, stress. The stress that comes from this training is going to be tremendous, meaning that we're also training your mental capacity to inherently face pressure, right? Because as a manager, you're always going to be needing that that work under pressure mentality, so that making sure if anything does go bad in a volatile market, volatile corporation, when things go bad, you're able to do something about it. You do not shut down under stress. So why is this important? All of the reasons that I've given to you justify why these particular people have the right to be given benefits, extra salaries, because they already sacrificed time. They're effective workers for the company. They're putting out chances that they themselves can be much more stressful than they are now. So this is important to note, because we have to reward the sacrifice that this people has given. Now, what would it look like underside affirmative side, right? PM spent time literally explaining how corporations are toxic and companies are going to be only hiring from top university and not giving anything on any other counter proposal. So how is it that they're going to find future leaders under their side of the house? They did not clarify how. If they are going to bring it, if later on they're going to bring it on their whip, it's already far too late, and I've already reminded them, so they've lost. First of all, bad characteristics. Talking about toxic companies, right? It is going to be far worse underside government, because government side of the house gives no explanation on how they find future leaders. I'm free to assume that they're going to use seniority, nepotism on side government. So people who are not competent, but they're there for a longer time period, gets the job. Or people who's even incompetent, but they know the boss very well, gets the promotion that they do not deserve. So in comparison, toxic corporation is going to be far more worse, because later, for any metric used under side government is extremely subjective. In comparison to side opposition, we try to even out the playing field, making sure that it's as objective as possible. Everything is based on your workforce. In your workforce, we understand that later on, oh yeah, most people that have that workforce later is going to be from top universities. But it also leaves room for people from less known university to be able to do that, or to be able to have. What are the chances? It's far lower, but then again, it's still going to exist. There's always people from less known university that have the self-motivation, that have the wanting to improve, that joins this program and eventually later on improve. Right? So that's what we're trying to propose, and that's how we're going to mitigate the problem that the whole corporate system is a lie, it's not fair. Later on, it's always going to be much more fair, because we're putting everything on the base of metrics of what you're going to be able to do for the company. Second, what happens to other people that doesn't join the training program? Even when it's not mentioned specifically in the motion, what happens to senior workers in the company? It is much more fair to go through this program rather than using other methods if you're a senior, right? That you can be manager if you're new, you're unable to be manager. This is what seniority means. It will raise incompetent leaders in the long run, only craves for respect from all of its from all of its workers, and doesn't actually do anything that makes the workers much more effective. They say that refreshing seniors is unfair. No, why we refreshing senior? We think that refreshing seniors is very good. Oftentimes, senior gets too comfortable in the position where they might not know the current struggle. What is trend within the workers or whatsoever? They don't know what they're doing. So even if seniors have to go through a new selection process, we think this is fair, because exactly they spent 10 years there. If they're the same person 10 years ago, then why should we as a company make sure that you're still here? Let's just kick you out and find a person that is actually willing to improve. In the end of the day, not everyone is built to be leaders, bro. Only those who work under pressure, only those who have the proper training and whatsoever, right? So that's why MT program later on is going to be far better in what the affirmative is going to propose. Therefore, this motion should fall.
All right, thank you for that speech. Now I call upon the government whip. Time is yours.
Am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Can I go to the toilet dulu bentaran aja, just like 1 minute?
Yes, it's okay. Take your time.
Yeah, thank you. Hello, I'm back. Hold on. Preferred pronoun she, they. If I get chopped out, just notify me. Okay, starting my speech in 3, 2, 1. Panels, opposition case will only fly, assuming that the pre-existing workers in the company is so unskilled and their performance is bad, hence why they need to train new recruits to management training. This is a very worst case coming from opposition sides, which is becoming their whole substantive, and that's a shame because all the harms that actually they told us is their own worst case scenario and has been debunked by my previous speaker. But of course, let's get through this debate through 2 clashes I'm going to explain. Number 1, which side creates a better opportunities for future employees, and also second clash regarding the manifestations on both sides and why it is actually going to be better under our sides of the house, right? So first clash, which side creates a better opportunities for future employees? I have 2 sub clashes. Number 1, I'm going to talk about the ability to tap in. So first, oppositions come to this debate and being so charitable that look, we are going to open this opportunity for everyone. Hence why we open training that inclusive for everyone who want to improve, providing on trainings and whatnot. I think that these characterizations from opposition is very jumpy because they forgot to actually analyze what is the competitions to gaining job looks like inside the school, right? I think what happened is that number 1, corporations is looking for people with good skills. That is to say, Ivy League campuses are going to receive better percentage to be recruits because they have better facilities, curriculum, and well-known alumni, for example. Hence why corporations already believe if these graduates have good skill to begin with in comparison to graduates from less popular universities. But notice that this fact also happens symmetrically on both sides, right? We never actually consider that this never happened on our side of the house. But secondly, corporations is also looking for sustainability, meaning that aside from skills, they will also prefer young workers, hence why the openness of opposition narrative does not guarantee if you as a senior would be accepted anyway by the end of the day. Both of these 2 facts are symmetrical on both sides. We do not see what is the difference with them creating this management training, for example, making it open for everyone with the traditional recruitment process that my previous speaker already championed in the debate, right? But also thirdly, most important, opposition also mentioned on how they're going to create young skilled workers, for example, to comply with these corporations' needs. Several response. A, notice that this is why my first speaker explanation is important. Because where you disable workers or employee who start from zero, for example, the capacity to be promoted for the pre-existing workers or to grow in itself is going to be hampered, right? Regardless whether their skill is good or not. So now the competition is going to be much more unfair under opposition of the house. But secondly, if opposition want to champion fairness under their side, it is going to be even more hostile because junior now can go through quote-unquote instant progress while hampering senior process, right? Because this management trainee does not take longer time as to employee, for example, that climb from zero to being a manager by the end of the day, right? It is much more instant in comparison to process of you being promoted for several times into manager, for example, and for senior to go through training again, for example. It is not actually fair for them to be in the same level with juniors, so we do not see why under the side of the house it is actually going to be much fairer, right? But also for interestingly, they brought about nepotisms, right? But honestly, this is symmetrical because the recruitment both of this management trainee and also traditional recruitment done by the corporations in its own right. You cannot actually determine why it's going to be much more, for example, transparent, for example, under your side of the house. But in any way, this is going to be worse under opposition side of the house because now these people who benefit from nepotism, for example, have easy paths to be a manager above all employees who have worked earlier, right? Under our side of the house, okay, nepotism happen, bad things happen in corporations, right? But the difference is that under our side of the house, these people are now not going to go through instant process to be in high positions like manager, for example. They're only going to be given equal positions just like any other employee, right? For example, and the end of the day, under our side of the house, competition is still going to happen, as in when these people who benefit from nepotism could not actually survive or could not actually compete with other workers who go through natural process, for example, and have better skills. Yes, they're still going to left out and they're not going to get that high positions like what happened on the opposition side of the house the moment that they graduate from this management training, right? For example, hence why oppositions only actually explain the worst case of their side of the house, right? But also second subclash, I'm going to talk about the quality of the skills of this future employee. Firstly, oppositions talk about how they're going to give special skills trainings and knowledge training regarding departments on companies in itself, right? But you cannot actually equalize the capacity of this management trainee born new employee to senior that start from junior as well, for example, and spends years, for example, in that company, right? B, exactly why my explanations from first speaker is important because management training program is designed for you to feel good. Notice that the harm my previous speaker already explained are going to be emphasized even more on the opposite because you are born from that program that is of course not accessible for everyone, hence creates the nuance that, oh, not everyone get into this, I'm better than everyone, I can get directly to a high positions in comparison to anybody else's that have to climb from zero, for example. No response from opposition whatsoever regarding this burden, right? But see, under opposition is going to be worse because these young workers are being forced to mature in a very short period and being overwhelmed by workloads you never experienced before. What is the difference under our side of the house? At our side of the house, as a young worker, you are given, for example, position that is not as high as a manager. Yes, it's not as high as a manager, it's not profitable as a manager, but that's totally fine because under our side of the house, what we are going to have is an organic change when you can gradually learn what your work look like, for example, what your corporations looks like. Hence why under our side of the house, growth going to happen even better, right? Because you are not forced by the immediate amount of workloads, for example, or immediate change in the environment that you have to adapt to different departments and whatnot. For example, those are just promotional purpose. You don't necessarily get, exclusive skill improvement and whatnot. Aside from that, if you want to improve your skills and whatnot, there are a lot of alternatives that is shorter, for example, take shorter time in comparison to management trainee. So hence why I don't think that any of their benefits actually going to be much more exclusive in maintaining the skills of this worker of this employee by the end of the day, right? But also lastly on my first flash, right? In status quo, a lot of people are looking for jobs because they actually necessarily need the salary in itself, right? They do not want to go through a longer process like management trainee, for example, simply to do the exercise to build their skills that can also be accessed through short courses or online courses, for example, right? Hence why they will rather to actually opt into traditional recruitment where they can exactly get the jobs immediately, get the salary immediately, and there as an employee they could also improve and also know even better about the department in itself, right? But also last clashes, right? Regarding manifestations, two things. A, opposition talks about how they're going to use the money much more effective, right? First, I think that this is what incentivizes company to become more exploitative of the young management trainees because they are rushed with the deadlines and everything, right? But also secondly, they just cannot come and say that we are going to teach them how to handle everything under stress in itself, right? Because mental health issue will coexist even if you already prepare them since the beginning, right? Mental health under pressures will just keep justify under opposition side of the house because if they try to complain, they're just gonna say, we already told you how to handle this. It should not be a huge problem. You can do this. You will be manager in the future and whatnot, right? On the other hand, these trainees too cannot necessarily quit because of the because their participations on these trainings, for example, or the promise of positions as a manager that actually very intriguing for them, right? But also B, opposition talk about how this management trainee exclusively told you to learn market stocks and whatnot, right? But I think that learning how to handle market stock by mentoring is not necessarily efficient because everything should be faced differently instead of a template of what mentoring should do, right? This needs to be exercised directly with experience and whatnot, right? But so also, this is what actually government will facilitate. For example, young workers go through organic changes and are able to opt into learning market stock gradually because they practically do so. They have, supervisors, for example, and whatnot, that could actually watch their performance and also teach them market stocks and whatnot, but along with the practical, implementations, right? More importantly, the portion of work given to them are not as overwhelmed as what happened in the opposition of the house. Hence why it's easier for young people to face it under the house for government.
All right, thank you for that speech. Now I call upon the opposition whip. Time is yours.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you are audible.
Okay, sure. I'm going to start my speech in 3, 2, 1. So first of all, a few rebuttal. First is that gradually learning slowly can happen under side negative by simply not joining the program. So their benefit of, if you are new, then you don't need to be stressed. That can happen under our side. Simply just don't join the training program. Casually learning means that you are not ready yet. So just work in your own position until you're ready. When you're ready, then you can join the program. Secondly, is that nepotism isn't symmetrical on both sides. On our side of the house, we have transparency, curriculum, and standardized tests. They said that nepotism is not going to promote them to a higher position anyways, but we think that the moment when you sleep with your boss, and sooner or later when your boss retires, you have the 100% chance to get that job. So in the end, it is still stepping stone to get a permanent high position. And transparency of the program. They keep saying that we are biased and etc. How are we biased when we have a metric to judge and score these trainees? We are actually much more transparent because the standard is the same for everyone. We give easy access for people who want and willing to study and learn more, because even seniors cannot know anything. At least in the worst case, we push seniors to learn additional materials. Under their side, transparency do not exist because, like my first half said, you can look good and literally appeal to your boss and get a promotion. And third is the exploitation of younger workers from the affirmative argument relies on people being stupid. The only reason why this mindset of younger means stupider exists is because back in the day, there's no internet, no also social media, there is no popularity of worker union to spread. However, nowadays, people are more capable and conscious about their position in a company, including how to negotiate their salary and when to accept or not to accept salary. The second speaker affirmative argument is relying on younger people being less capable of negotiating with their employers, which is not a good point because seniors who are there and work for a longer time and still stay in the entry-level position prove to you that age just does not mean an increase in ability to negotiate or to work. And for this, that the CEO, COO, and managers and leaders hold a very volatile position. They said that market is very volatile. Same goes under their side. There is no preparation for seniors who suddenly can prepare for a volatile market in which stock prices can literally plummet, because even though they are seniors, does not mean that they have the experience in this field unless they are managers already. Under our side, we have preparation, we have scenarios, tasks, and etc. Exactly when this position is crucial to the failure of success of this company, you need someone who is emotionally ready and someone who is 100% invested. Fifth is that the affirmative says seniority has the best experience and most suitable for the job. Then, like, why not just take the program? Because they have the highest confidence, right? They think they are better than everyone else. Then there's nothing wrong with joining. And when they succeed, then good for them. It proves that they are capable and even better than everyone in terms of management skills. Why referencing senior is good? Because oftentimes seniors get too comfortable in a position where they might not know the current struggle. What is the trend within workers? How the working environment is. So even if seniors have to go through a new selection process, we think it is fair because exactly when they spend 10 years, the working environment in order to manage these people may be different now from 10 years ago. See this as a training program instead of a reset to zero, because even when they are selected, they are going to have a better quality exactly because they have been given new training and mentoring. If they think it is unfair, then it is egotistic for them simply because they are older. They have the power to directly get a position. At least when they enter office, they have more information and skills to do their job. Two clashes. One is the better working environment, and secondly is the accessibility. First is better working environment. So seniority problems, right? On their side of the house, it means that they do not want to reward the self-motivated trainees. Programs are free. The point is that the employees gets a chance to get promoted to a managerial position in the shorter term. This fixes the problems of promotion based on seniority that plagues company without it. Because most often, the only people that are promoted to higher positions are older people regardless of their competence. Discuss incompetence in the workplace. Even when promoting people based on seniority works, it is still worse than the system proposed by our side of the house. Management without MTP, employees will have a longer time working on a lower position with lower salary, despite knowing that they can be paid better. This will demotivate employees because they feel undervalued. Either motivated employees quit their jobs or their work become ineffective and slow because they will have the mindset that thinks, regardless of how much effort I put into improving myself, promotion will still be based on precedence anyway. But on our side of the house, our program provides one is the enable company to find future leaders, right? Because MTP are for people who are self-motivated. They can be trained and fully develop their skills for a managerial position. Not only that, it will cut the time for company to find people worth promoting. It also reduces the amount of mistake and recklessness because the people that they are going to promote are already trained and ready. Without MTP, this is not possible since they will need time to adjust and to master how to be a manager. There's also quality control. And secondly, is the competence and better quality because through MTP training, trainees are being taught on how to be better managers. Third is the healthier working environment, because by installing this program, the existence of it can motivate workers with self-interest to better themselves. They will feel rewarded and valued for the extra work that they did. The system of the check and balance are able to work for every side, whether it is the employee who are rewarded or the employer who are able to find better workers. Limitation, even if it is like limited and not everyone who graduate MTP can be promoted, it is still a good incentive for employee to compete, because when employees are motivated, there will be a lower numbers of people being hired and fired. Companies are also created on this thing too. And secondly is the clash. Second clash is the point of accessibility. MTP existence, like going through the trainee program while still working, means that those trainees are willing to take in the extra work and responsibility just to get promoted. It means that they are capable, which is all the more reasons to reward them with the higher salary and promotion. It is accessible to every employee. For seniors, like for younger people, this motivates them to work better. When affirmative says that they support the betterment of one's life through climbing the corporate ladder, they are trying to discount the fact that most people nowadays are having this mindset to achieve as much things as possible while being young, being seen to be in lower position of jobs, even with their dedication and hard work for younger employees are devastating because there is no reward. People are counting the value of time. They have limited time left, and with the lifestyle of today, it means that they value promotion in a short amount of time as a motivation or achievement to work better. Affirmative points about hiring an exhausting program on top of their work will discourage employees, but this is not true simply because everyone is competitive in status quo, right? Even if you don't want to compete, then don't join the program. Like time changes because in the past it is about who survived longest, but in stabler time, corporation is about being who is being more capable. Their side barely explains to you how promotion will be accessible to employees without waiting for a long time. MTB systems are much more justified even when seniors in the workplace environment are not rewarded with promotions. They can still be rewarded with anything else, such as an increase in salary or pensions for their loyalty, because being old does not automatically make employee good at their job, right? Affirmative emphasize on how it will discourage seniors from taking their job seriously, since the younger employees have a higher salary is absolutely ridiculous. Why our side deserve to win? Because the affirmative side justification of them regretting the program's existence is only because it seems toxic and it will inflate people's ego or devaluing long-term employees, which is not a good defense, because their alternative on their side is just for employees to wait long enough until they get promoted. If they are not promoted, it means that they are not old enough. On our side of the house, there is a clear objective grading matrix that can be used to determine how deserving an employee of being promoted. The affirmative side absence of any sort of measure is not making the workplace any better, since every employee are going to start guessing and wondering what it actually takes to get promoted. Some will even start being competitive or being toxic in the workplace and refuse to work together with others for the sake of looking better to their boss, which increase the toxicity for company, right? Which is why we believe it is better. We oppose. Thank you.
All right, thank you for the speech. Please allow me to go to the bathroom first. Will be very quick. Thank you. Hi guys, I'm back. Thank you for waiting. Apologies for the wait. And anyway, I call upon the opposition reply. From yours.
Speech will start in 3, 2, 1. Just because of 10 years doing the same job over and over again does not mean that you suddenly have things such as responsibility or you have the capability that is suited to be a leader. Note that this program is not just a reset for senior workers. It's not meant to be that. Even though they have to go through the selection process, we're actually equipping them with the current or newest, for example, strategies on how they are able to manage, right? And these types of skills, such as accountability, responsibility, knowing what to do at the most crucial time. Now, opposition comes to this debate talking about how it is unfair, how seniority should be the only merit on how you judge these qualities. Well, how is it fair if there are 20 seniors in the company and only two job opening, for example? We think that corporate, inside a corporate structure, it is never fair, right? So we think that the best merit to judge someone's qualities on whether or not they should get a position is by their skills on how they're able to do that job. We respond to you by bringing three things. First, we give you an equalized process to find people that with the desired qualities. We think that through all of this test and training, it is fair enough. Why is it fair for everyone? Because we give equal opportunities regardless on where you graduate from, right? Even if you graduate from a popular university, you are still going to have the chance to compete. But even if in the end these people still win, right? People that comes from the privileged areas, at least people who are less privileged per se, people who comes from, for example, a non-popular or non-favored university, at least they get the chance to compete, and that opening still exists for years and years to come. So they can keep competing for a new job opening the next time there is another empty program. Now, we also explain to you how lower seniority is better because under their side of the house, when seniority exists, you can simply comment someone with the basis of age. We do agree that experience in the end is important, but we don't think that that should be the sole metric for you to judge if someone can be a leader or not. Because if that experience is really helpful, is really going to make a huge difference, then why not just join the program and prove yourself right? Because we think that even if you don't get that position, at least you get some lesson and etc. Second, let's talk about capabilities and how they face seniors. Ops case also revolves around the fact that the job market or the corporation structure is very volatile. Stock prices can plummet up to I don't know how many percent, right? Now, in terms of facing volatility, just because you have spent 10 years, for example, being a secretary or being an engineer, does not mean that you can suddenly face volatility anyways and in need of quick response, right? This is where our training comes in because that is the importance. The whole motion relies on the fact that you give training to people. Note that within 10 years of you being a secretary or 10 years being an engineer, at least you get an additional knowledge that is able to equip you later on to be a good leader. Because doing one job and being a leader is going to be two very different things. At least under our side, the volatilities can be maintained, the volatilities can be prevented the moment when you give these people the skills that they need that usually are not equipped or not provided by the corporations themselves, which makes the whole selection process very shady. Last of all, how we can provide you with better quality um, leaders. Panels, note that there is no organic chance when you can sleep your way up to, for example, whatever position. They do exceed that nepotism exists as a stepping stone to get that manager position, but we think it's still harmful because if you're already favored from the beginning, if you give favors, sexual favors and whatnot, you still get that you still get that privilege over everyone else, and that lowers transparency. The better form of organic chance exists under our side because exactly when we know we provide equal opportunity to people, regardless of their gender, for example, uh, regardless of their background and etc. And then we give them a training, right? We're not just throwing a baby to become a manager, someone with low IQ, zero IQ. So don't buy government's case when it revolves around the fact that only experienced people is capable to be managers. So vote for opposition. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that speech. Now I follow up on the government reply. It's yours.
Okay, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible.
Okay, I will begin my speech in 3, 2, 1. The assumption under opposition that the skills that management trainee programs have is an exclusive secret unattainable otherwise is very funny to me. Opposition seems to only be able to play at their own characterization on how these MTPs will only be available for everyone, but at the same time seems to be championing the idea of juniors being much more capable and how rampant corruption and nepotism is, as if they assume that exact same thing wouldn't exist to the extent toward these MTPs anyway. Why wouldn't MTPs be corrupted and nepotism if it's as rampant as they try to sell us? They didn't even try to tackle this reality. But government comes in saying that this would be only available for fresh grads, exactly because this is the only implementation that would benefit the corporation due to how easier it is for them to abuse fresh grads and whatnot, but also how the implementation of this being available for everyone would be impossible at the end of the day. Why? They never tackled our explanation on how the specific criteria of passing MTPs made available to two different populations, talking about seniors and juniors who have way different skill sets, would manifest into a fair quote-unquote meritocracy that they always try to champion, something that they kept on championing, right? Their implementation would still always manifest into either corporations wanting fresh blood and finding easily abusable juniors that will chin up inhumane workloads, or corporations would only want the experience that seniors would have, overshadowing juniors during the MTPs anyway, a harm that they say is exclusive to us. We say nonsense. Simply by tackling their impossible characterization, do all of their arguments already fall? But let's still tackle our arguments against theirs anyway, right? First, we think that main clashes, we talk about fairness. Gov talked about on how fairness would be worsened under an already unfair system under capitalism. We don't want to emphasize privilege on how top graduates and those who have connections and whatnot who can only have access, but we prefer you working hard and climbing it naturally through time as it exists under the status quo. We realize that the status quo isn't perfect, but reserving spots exactly for these privileged people would only worsen the status quo, plus the idea of demotivation under the realization that seniors can't have jobs that compete with younger people due to this exclusivity. Instead, opposition talk about on how a meritocracy should be upheld, giving equal chances for juniors and seniors. I already talked about on how the different skill sets that they have could never manifest into a meritocracy that requires one specific thing. 2, let's talk about harm towards trainees and others. Let's talk about a point that never tackled by op, an exclusive harm until the end. We think the normalization of abuse under MTPs, talking about on how the neck-to-neck competitive nature of MTPs, talking about the expectation by both corporations and trainee that an inhumane workload given to them during MTPs is normal and a form of test to weed out incompetent candidates, extending to the normalization of this workload when they eventually graduate. Because why would a corporation lighten the workload of a worker capable of handling more? I don't think anyone here give capitalism that benefit of the doubt, right? Opposition tried to simply tackle this by saying how it's justified due to a higher salary that they'll get and a better career path that comes with it, all while ignoring the reality that trying to make someone a manager in a short 1 to 3 year training period, when it usually takes someone their entire career, comes with harms to their mental and their performance. Realize that the promotion of natural growth under government promotes someone having real-time experience to face things at a humanely pace, talking about on how they will get more and more workload as their career progresses, as they get more pay and whatnot, compared to ops shotgun to the face of a workload and the experience to be able to bear with it. Means that we give the benefit of these people not being shocked and ease into things, because realize the benefits of working for a longer period of time means having faced more things, more problems that are more unique. They never admitted on how a 1 to 3 year training period of training can only posit so much experience that would never match to our proposal, right? But government still think that these juniors will just be as skilled as the seniors. We don't understand. Not only will their performance be bad, but this is an obvious harm towards their mental, right? Stress, depression, realize also the inflation and emphasis of ego, superiority complex, and severe survivor biases under opposition, traits that I don't think anyone here would want for their boss to have. Instead, opposition seems to be fine with championing this. We don't see their arguments proud to propose.
All right, thank you for the speech. That marks the end of the debate. So debaters, please wait here as there will be oral adjudication. Judges, we may move to Discord, yeah, to B12. I'm heading there. See you there.